Well, hi everybody, and I'm Ruth and Polston, The Life That Wins, and it is a winning life. And I just invite everybody to join it, and I know there's a lot of you that already have. So anyway, this is an oldie. Remember it? Okay, I have decided to follow Jesus. Well, tonight if I was to ask you a big question, it would be this one. If you were asked, what is your purpose? Do you have a first purpose in your life? Would you know? Could you just say, oh sure, absolutely, I know. Well, tonight I'd like to just hone on that a little bit, because purpose people are really hard to keep up with, because they're almost consumed with their purpose, and they always are busy people. It's just kind of wherever they go and wherever they seem to pop up, it's who needs me? And because they love to help fill need, because they're purpose driven. Now, I think purpose driven people have already had a big need met in their own life. And it certainly, I can say that has been mine. My God has been filled a big need. Now this is, the need sometimes is bigger than we would say others, but anything with God that consumes you, that probably is your big dream. Now, there's a song that goes, bigger than any mountain, bigger than any fear. God is bigger than anything that can or cannot see. Bigger than all my heartaches and bigger than all the things that I cannot see. So anyway, now how do we receive a desire if we don't have a really purposeful dream in our life? Well, you must know what it is in the first place. You can't follow something that you don't know what it is. But if you know what it is, it's normal. And that's what my father-in-law used to say, Ruthann, when something is normal for you, it's yours. So you don't even think of it as not being normal. You might be a little abnormal and not even know it. But I had a friend, and she was plagued with a handicap, and it was cross eyes. Well, she had learned to make it work for her, and it was really precious, because she used it by humor. So I was with her one day in a store, and she was shopping, and she was telling the clerk what she wanted, and the clerk kept looking at her eyes to see where her eyes were going. And finally, in desperation, she turned to her and said, don't give me what I'm looking at. Give me what I'm pointing at. And there was just a little idea of how she always turned her handicap into a positive situation, and this girl had lots of friends. And so even handicaps can be turned to a positive asset. But now, some people have a great dream, But there are circumstances in the meantime that make you almost question the dream. Was that of the Lord, or wasn't that of the Lord? Because circumstances can be opposite, and you could almost come to the conclusion, I'm not sure that was of the Lord at all. And so, faith is that wonderful, mystical quality that God gives a believer. And they can sustain an awful lot of trauma when they know their dream is of God. So I just kind of want to talk to you about that and how it worked out its way in the life of Joseph. All right, Joseph was just a young person when God gave him a dream. He was next to the youngest of the children. There were 12 children. Anyway, in this dream, he was too young to know better. So the dream was that he was going to be in great rulership somewhere, somehow. And to a young person, that's a pretty big deal. So he goes out in the field, and his immaturity, he told the brothers. Well, right away, because this would include them, right away they had their back up. And they said, you rule over us? And from that moment on, they hated him. So one day he came out and they said, well, here's the dreamer again. Somebody said, I'm getting tired of this, let's get rid of him. So they set about, they said, let's kill him. So they threw him in a pit and they, got ready for all of it. And finally, here comes some slave traders that were going on their way to Egypt. And they said, let's take advantage of him. We can sell him and make some money. Great idea. So they all agreed, put him on the slave truck, and away he went to Egypt. Foreign land, foreign customs, foreign gods, everything foreign. But he was on his way and carrying his dream, but probably not meditating on the dream too much. He'd probably say, where am I going? What am I doing? Where am I going to end up? Well, when the auction, the slave auction was on, the man, now let's look at the circumstances. The man that said, I like that man over there, I think I'll buy him. So he bought him. His name is Potiphar. And he was a big man in the courts of Pharaoh, which was the biggest empire in the world at that time. So he said, I'll buy that one. So he took Joseph home and gave him some nice clothes to wear and everything. And as he began to serve him, he recognized this was no ordinary kid. He was very, very smart. He knew how to take care of the affairs that were in his home, Potiphar's. So he said to him, he said, I don't even have to look into my affairs anymore. He said, I trust you, and so you just go ahead and take care of him. And it said that he didn't bother about anything in his house anymore. That's how capable that Joseph was. But he had a wife. And his wife set him up. And she tried her best in her lustful ways to get Joseph to commit adultery with her. And Joseph absolutely, the fear of God was in his heart. And so one day, she was pursuing him and he was running away from her. And of course, he didn't want to tell Potiphar what she was doing. And so one day when she did, he ran from her, but she grabbed his coat. And as she did, he fled from the house. Well, here comes Potiphar home. And she said, you know what that slave did to me? Look, I kept his coat. Well, here we are. What are we going to do now with the dream? So they said, well, nothing else to do. You got to put him in prison, Pharaoh's prison. They weren't very nice either. So he put him in the prison. But you know what he did? Remember the dream. This is a dreamer. He served in the prison. He found out what the needs, the thoughts of the inmates were. And so he'd get them to talk about themselves. So they would talk about their past, they would talk about their groans and their stocks that sometimes they were put in, and they were a bunch. But he talked to two one day, and they both had a problem, and they both had dreams. Well, you know, he was born into a dream, so he was an interpreter of dreams. So he said, well, tell me your dream. Well, the one we're not going to go into, but one said, he said, the dream you had is that you're going to be back in Pharaoh's court, and you're going to be serving Pharaoh, and this will happen again. And so he said, if you don't mind, maybe you could remember me. Well, 2 years went by. He didn't remember Joseph. He was just glad to be out of prison. So one day, guess who had a dream? Pharaoh. And this dream is that there was coming a famine. It wasn't just a famine for their country. It was going to be a famine that was worldwide. And the implications of it were dire. The whole human race would be suffering, and all the countries of that time. So he said, I'll get my diviners in here and see what they did. They couldn't interpret the dream. And all of a sudden, here's this fellow that's come out of the prison. He said, yeah, there was a man who told me a dream, and it came to pass. And he was down there. He said, what was his name? He was in the prison? Call for him. So they fixed up Joseph so he was presentable to see Pharaoh, and he went in to talk to him. He said, what can I do? And he said, I've had a dream, and I understand that you do interpret dreams. He said, yes, I do. So he said, tell me. So when he told him his dream, he said, can you tell me what it means? So he told him. He said, there are coming 7 years when there's plenty to eat. And the world will just live on the fat of the land. But he said there's following 7 years after that, a drought. And the whole world will be crying for bread. And he said, well, that's pretty serious. So then he looks at him and he said, can you do anything about that? Well, Joseph thought it over, and he said, maybe God can. He said, I'll talk to God. So you know what? Pharaoh said, I don't know anybody like you. So he said, I'm going to make you the second in command. And anybody in my whole country, I want them to know that nobody even puts up his foot unless Joseph said so. And if they ask me a question, I'll say, go to Joseph. Now we're back at the dream. Was this the dream? So, rulership. So he's in the palace. And he and God, they were so connected. They had been. Nothing had daunted him. He had never left his moorings. His dream was bigger than all the problems that he faced. And so God gave him the plan. And the plan was that during that 7 years of plenty, that Egypt would take large granaries, and they would just plant corn, and they would put them in these granaries. And pretty soon they were just had them all over the country. Well, the 7 years of poverty struck. And when it struck, the whole countries around them, and even farther, they were beginning to make a trail into Egypt. They would do anything for bread. They would do anything for corn. They would do anything for starvation. And Pharaoh would say, go to Joseph. So Joseph was out there, and he would tell all the other workers, he said, okay, fill them up, fill their sacks, and send them back to their countries. And they'd go back to their countries. Well, you can imagine. Did you ever wonder how Egypt got to be such an empire? Well, the whole country was bowing. They were bowing, they didn't know it, but they were bowing to God, and they were bowing to Joseph. And of course, he was the pathway to Pharaoh, second to Pharaoh. Well, that went on for 7 years. And during that time, even his own family came down. Yeah, they came down from the promised land. And he recognized them, but he didn't let him know it. He acted kind of gruff on purpose because they had a lot to prove. And it wasn't he had any ill will, but he wanted to be able to trust them. So he didn't say much. Well, anyway, what happened in this, Joseph became very, very great. And you know what he became with his dream? He became the breadbasket of the world. Don't ever sell your dreams short. If God gives it to you, the Bible said, do it with all your heart. Put your heart into it. Yeah, if you're a bricklayer, lay bricks with the greatest of joy. Yes, if you're a farmer, take your flocks and your herds and your plants and your orchards, take it seriously. My father did that. Whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. Now, how is it? Do you think there's clearing anything up? Or have you kind of got your eyes on what's between you and your dream? And you said, it must have been wrong. There's too many problems here. And he said, but remember, God has a larger purpose. Now, let's look at God's people. And then we'll close and hope that God has defined your purpose. God leads us from faith to faith, glory to glory, strength to strength. I don't see any boredom in that, do you at all? No, it hasn't singled my life except to his purpose. So, you'll never get bored when you have a dream and you take its dream, your dream, to its furthest limit. God is greater than anything you can see, greater than any mountain, greater than any sea. God is greater. So I've decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I'm turning back. No turning back. And I will say before I go, the one that had the biggest plan of all, and the greatest plan of all, and I got in on it. And if you know Jesus Christ, let me tell you, the greatest dream of God was to send his Son into the world that the world might be saved. It can't get any better than that. So decide to follow Jesus. God bless you and have a wonderful week.